All right, so Olea didn't come here to hear me tell a story, right? So I'm going to invite somebody who I've known my whole life. Earl Lovelace is more than an author, more than a novelist, more than somebody who manages to make us make sense on paper in the way perhaps that Shadow managed to make us make sense in music. He's a sensible man, and that's why we're starting with him. The idea is that we're going to share a few tracks that Uncle Earl has chosen. We've had a great conversation back and forth for the past week or so, deciding what these pieces of music will be, and sort of having a conversation around how those songs influence a question which he has posed in his work: what have we done with what we have done? Okay, so you said just ask questions. We'll see how this goes. When we were initially talking about the idea, one of the first things you said was the sound is more than the sound. And you said that since you were a little fella, you engaging with Carnival, you were looking for a sound and you weren't sure if you had found it yet. What was the sound you were looking for?
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me here. I don't even know what the sound was. What I know is that I was looking for a sound. I was going, I used to follow what is called the traditional mass, which is really the mass coming out of the African experience, and wanting for them to say something that I didn't know what it was. And the same thing would happen to me with steel band too, even in the early years. I would follow a band, I don't know the band, I don't know where they're going, and I am going along. And in a kind of way is looking for or listening for something that maybe people utter, but perhaps they never do. But it's something that is expecting something from a place or from an institution that it doesn't always give in the way that you were looking for it, So that would be my answer to the song.
All right. So should we go to the first song?
Right. I think I should say, what should I say? I thought I had written down, I had an introduction. So I thought I would give you the introduction now. But maybe we'd better just go to the song. The first song is Gene and Dinah, right?
Well, the girls in town feeling bad. No more Yankees in Trinidad. They gonna close down the base for good. Them girls have to make out how they could. Brothers now they pop up in tongue. In for a penny and in for a pound. Believe me, it's competition for so. Trouble in the tongue when the price drop low. So when you bounce up, Gene and Dinah, Rosita and Clementina, on the corner posing that your life is something they sell it. And when you catch them broke, you can get them all for nothing. Don't make a row. The Yankees gone, Sparrow they go now. Only West Indians like me or you go in to get a drink or two. And as we have things back in control, I seeking revenge with my heart and soul. Brother, when I spread the news around, it's to see how them cavemen come into town just to meet Miss Gina and Dinah, Rosita and Emma Martina. Round the corner posing, bet your life is something they're selling. And you catch them.
Gina and Dinah brings up a few things.
Right. Yes, I think, as I said, I never liked Gina and Dinah. The truth is, but it was so persuasive, it was so much a wrong that you couldn't not like it, or couldn't not sing it, or could not be connected with it in some kind of way. And I was like that as well. It disturbed me, it was a kind of disturbing calypso from many perspectives. One was, the Yankees gone, the song goes, and Sparrow take over now. And these girls who were dependent on the Yankees, so to speak, now would have to give it up for nothing. That now, what the words, the Yankees gone and Sparrow take over now. Sorry?
By the sweat of thy brow.
Right, by the sweat of thy brow thou shalt eat bread. I mean, when you look at that as if one talks about symbolic of the political change that had taken place, because what happened at that point was that this was 1956, and so it was on the verge of not independence yet. Independence would be a few years down the road, but it would be self-government. And this kind of expression from a Calypsonian seemed to mirror our attitude to ourselves, our attitude to the people, to the dispossessed, to the people who were scrunching and so on. And I see the song in terms of three things. One, the politics. And I ask the question, is that what we expect of our politics? Now that we're in charge, is this what we expect of ourselves? So that was one question. And the question also had to do with the viewing of women. Because one would think that even if these women were whoever they were, that there would be some kind of empathy, some kind of feeling for them. But that wasn't there. No, this was really a big song. Every single body knew it. Right? So I thought about it in terms of the politics, and in terms of the woman, and there was something else I said, which it was, all right. Okay, well, I don't want to look, politics, women, right, and the Calypsonians' own consciousness. To what degree have we changed? To what degree has this consciousness changed? Now, this is quite a long time ago, from 56 to now. And so it would be useful for us to look, I think, at ourselves to see where we have arrived, you know, both in terms of the treatment of women, right, or the visualizing of women, if you want, in terms of the question of consciousness, where have we arrived at? And the other, and politics, consciousness, and the woman. So that was where I wanted to get to. So what do I have to say about that now? Right. I was thinking also that there was a lot that had to do with the women. Melda, there was another, Sparrow didn't only sing one calypso about women. There were many calypsos about women. And many of them were kind of demeaning. And one would have thought, and one we think, and people used to say, well, this is the way these men deal with women. The problem, however, was that it wasn't about women they dealt that way with. It was black women. It was African women that were treated in this fashion. And I think that somehow, I don't know if this was ever brought to the fore, if this was ever raised as a topic, a question raised in the tents or raised even in discussions, you know. And I think that, you know, in terms of dealing with this and the music and so on, this gives us the opportunity perhaps to revisit certain questions which we have kind of ignored out of embarrassment, out of a whole number of reasons, you know. But I think it's very useful now that in order for us to go forward, we have to begin to answer or respond to some of these questions that have been raised in our midst.
Yeah.
Right?
It's interesting that, so you have 3 Sparrow songs that you chose.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is a very radical departure from the first Gene and Dinah, which is The Slave.
Right.
Listen to it. Listen to it.
I'm a slave from a land so far. I was caught and I was brought here from Africa. I'm a slave from a land so far. I was caught and I was brought here from Africa. Well, it was licks like fire from the white slave master. Every day I down on my knees. Weeks and weeks before we crossed the seas to reach in the West Indies. And then they made me work. Oh yes, I work. A good Lord, no pay. I toil and toil and toil and toil so hard each day. I'm dying. Yeah, I'm crying.
We can see some kind of change, and I don't know. Well, there are a number of things, again, even as I listen to the song now, we said there was licks like fire from the white slave master every day, down on my knees. The problem with Trinidad is that Trinidad didn't only have white slave masters. It had black slave masters, it had mulatto slave masters. If we look, and I think that this is a question that has been kind of ignored largely by people all around about. In 1783, I think, yes, when there was the cedula of population, the people who were invited to come here were people from the surrounding islands. And they were invited and given lands on the basis of the number of people they had enslaved. So, so a white person got 30 acres of land for every person he had enslaved. The mulattoes got 15 acres, and the blacks, who there were a few black people who had bought their freedom, etc., they also got 15 acres of land. The whole stories that we've been told of, which suggest that people were very adventurous, very resourceful, very hardworking, and that had given them land. No. This is the basis on which they got land. This is the basis on which land was distributed in this country. And we never changed. In fact, even later on, we never had we never had a land distribution, new land distribution. Even when people kind of like more recently now have been talking about reparation and so on. And in a situation where it was clear that that land had been distributed to people on the basis of race and, if you want, class, right? So I think that, why am I saying this now?
Because we were talking about the consciousness. I think that it ties back into the idea of the Calypsonians' consciousness and the fact that in Slave, Sparrow sings, it was licks like fire from the white slave master. So it's like a very limited understanding of the history, of the nuances of the history perhaps, and
Right.
and how those gaps haven't really been filled.
Right. I think one of the ideas that I also had was the sense that why no, African men didn't treat every woman so. So why did they treat black women in this way? Right? And I think that is a question that we have to address. Why did these fellas treat black women particularly so? And it would seem to me that the black woman had, well, I think that the idea I have come up with, and it's probably going to be a big involved thing. The black woman was close to them. The black woman knew them. They knew our hesitations, our bullshit, all the rest of it. Women were witnesses. And in a kind of way, they had to treat these witnesses that way. They couldn't perform in front of these women. Another woman come, you could talk about whoever she was. You could perform for her. She didn't know you, and she took you. She had an idea of who you were. She didn't know the nitty-gritty of who you were really, And I think that is also something that we have to deal with, Right. And so yes, I tried to edge it off here and say.
But that brings us to our next song, which is another song about women, by Blakey.
Right.
But look at me cross friends who sing rich over. Man quite in this out, still in a doubt. I pick up with Maria. Introduce her to me, darling, that's Lord Blakey. Oh, what a lovely face. She put on the angel smile on me, and that was the case. Now I'm calling Maria. Girl, I love you so bad. Maria, if you leave me now, will be hard. I don't know what make me love so, but she catch me sweet. What she give me to rub, I eat. I don't know what to say about him. Down every day she doing me what she like. Man, I can't catch me breath, I'm frightened to death. You could ask me neighbor Mike. It have a thing she does do, I can't tell it to you because plenty people
for me, I was kind
and yet still it have some.
This is an old song as well. This is an old song. And it is one of a few, actually. And for a long time I wondered, well, how come we here in the Caribbean didn't have many romantic love songs in a kind of way? And I was wondering whether it was because we got so many from Black America that they were the people singing love songs. And it's an amazing thing when you consider the brutality that people have had to undergo, the tenderness of some of these songs. We didn't have them. And even Maria, this song here, is more, towards the end of the song, Blakey says, that now she's giving, where is Maria now? Maria is in the back there waiting for when he get his pay.
Salary.
to get it. And in a kind of way, it wasn't a bad kind of relationship, but it seemed a relationship of some kind of equality. a closer equality rather than of somebody taking care of somebody, you know. And so that was right.
But I'm concerned about the idea of the love song, though. This is something that concerns me, because when we were talking the other day, we were trying to go through love calypso songs, and we were having a hard time coming up with many that weren't, in a way, like almost resentful of the fact that she had feelings for somebody, one, or suggesting that the woman had some sort of supernatural assistance. So even in Maria, he says, "What she give me to rub I eat." In many of Sparrow's, in Obia Wedding, he talks about, good morning, Mr. Walker.
Right.
You know, it's always something, Kitchener, ugly woman, which is, as you were saying, just a general song about, getting an ugly woman to marry. It wasn't directed specifically at anybody.
Right.
But yeah, going through the history, and I was listening to Maria the other day, and I was thinking how really different is Hooking Me from Maria, in terms of what Farmer Nappy is saying. He's basically saying a similar thing, which is that this woman is cooking good and looking good, and so in a way he can't leave the situation. So whether she has made a decision about it or not, he is somehow possessed by her and is unable to leave the situation. And we see that same thing in Maria, and I'm just wondering what that is about. It's almost as if they're I mean, love songs are generally about unrequited love, maybe, but there are also great love songs that are just about love and about how you feel about a person.
Right. Well, there's the song, Melda, You're Making Wedding Plans, carrying my name to Obia man. All you do, you can't get through, I still ain't go married to you. And here's this woman who had this feeling, or this ambition, if you want, of getting a husband and getting married and going along and being taken care of. And here is this fella saying to her that this ain't gonna happen. The amount of incense that you burn at night, lard and garlic stinking up the place, so many different color candles that you light, rubbing red lavender in your face. Nastiness gonna cause you death. Girl, no man can stand your breath. So he has imposed on this woman now not only somebody who he is not willing to get married to, but kind of distorted her very being in a kind of way,
But he has, after he casts aspersions on her Obianess, he ends the calypso by saying, Papa Niza is my grandfather. After all of that, he is admitting that if you send Obia for me, I could send back Obia for you. Right. So in a way, it's like even doubly, distorted, because there's an understanding that Obia is part of all of us.
Right. What I'm concerned with is what has brought the man to that position. That is the question. What is it has brought him to that position? Because I can't see it just as his own individual wickedness, and lack of taste and everything else. But it has to be something else. And I think we have to look at the society more closely. Look at the banning of music, religion, the kind of treatment that these people have had, the treatment of black people in this society. And the reason why we need to look at it again is because we act as if enslavement is a kind of like a stroll in a park. Like if it was nothing, no big deal. it was a most profound, deliberating thing, you know. And I think until we understand that, we are in no position even to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and just the treatment of women is one of the offshoots of that behavior or of that situation in which people found themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Christopher wants to say something.
I just want to add to it. One of the only love calypsos that I can think of, really love calypsos, is Rose by Sparrow.
Mm.
But Rose, you're looking for blows.
Yes, but it's still, it's
Right.
it's a tabanka song.
Right.
But what is significant about Rose, talking about the consciousness of the calypsonia, is that when Sparrow sang Rose with Mamie that year, Rose was disqualified by the judges as not being a calypso.
Oh.
And that's when Douglas won the crown.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Raising it. So it's kind of significant that the judges, the only real tabanka calypso of the time, considered it wasn't a calypso.
Right. Right. And what I have come to, the love song that I have, and the song that I like, and this is a song I like too, is Bend Over.
By Marshall.
Marshall Montano.
It's a big tune, though. It's a big tune. Can you find it?
Listen to it.
We have a white girl here, Elisha. Atlas.
Yes.
Elisha, take it away. You have floor space.
This girl, she walking up a storm, whining in a circle. Watch how she perform. She's so cool when she whine and freeze. People stop and staring. Got man on their knees and bawling. Girl, the way you roll it up across hot, making me go crazy. Just standing here and watching you whine like that. You're making it so hard for me. Girl, bend over.
Right.
P.S. DJ Nomad is playing tomorrow night in the Wajang discotheque. If you want to come and wind down to the ground, it's all good.
Right. But I like this song because it also is a song also of not the traditional mode of love song. It's almost is this person has a presence. This person is an independent woman, incidentally. I think that there's a certain quality of independence that she is not looking for affirmation from anybody. You could admire if you choose to, but it's a slightly different thing. And it's not really in the tradition of the old love song, so to speak, but it begins to be more today's business. And in fact, the song that you mentioned has a little touch of that too, that, you're looking so good and everything, I can't leave you now.
Yeah.
Right.
There was something that I wanted to say about this Bend Over song,
Yeah,
which I mean, aside from the fact that it's
right.
it is about the woman having agency. Oh, it was that perhaps the woman in Bend Over is like Sylvia, who walks in her tall, hot beauty that she doesn't understand. And when you included the song, and I went back and I was reading through Dragon, because there's a lot of time spent on describing, Sylvia's presence,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and the fact that Sylvia walks a particular way. Also in Salt, you have a line about women shaking their melodious backsides, which I carry with me all the time, because there's a thing about the melody of a woman's body, which Shadow talks about whoops waps in Rolly Bumbalum. There's a thing about the music of a woman's body that is is very beautiful. Maybe it's not love in Western sense, and maybe it is also a type of objectification of the woman's body in terms of the male gaze, etc., etc. But I feel like there's also a sense of agency in these women and independence, as you say.
Right. Well, I think that I don't know that the Western idea of woman and love is ended. I don't think that we reached the end, And I think that the business about the body and the music of the body and the totality of the person, which is presented increasingly in the black woman and including other women as well, I think that is a new movement, if you want, Yes. So I would see in Bend Over, the song just happened to have Bend Over in it. But Bend Over is also important too, because Bend Over shows a certain part of this woman's body when she bends over. And whereas one might talk about a certain part of her face in an earlier time, one is talking now about her whole person, it seems to me. So I think that is an interesting kind of development. I think it's a development certainly from the calypsos we had earlier, whether it was Gina and Dinah or Melda or even Rose, I don't see how this girl would expect any blows from anybody.
She would beat you back. For
Right,
sure.
Right.
The next song is not a love song. The next song is a shadow song, and it is from the 90s.
This is one. Which one?
Poverty is Hell.
Yeah.
Poverty is hell, and the angels are in paradise, driving in their limousine, where everything is nice and clean. A poor man living in a teeny-weeny hut, the children hungry, nothing in the pot. He gone by the neighbor to beg for some rice. The neighbor under pressure, boy, things ain't nice. He gone in the big shot area to beg. A police put a bullet in his teeny-weeny leg. He gone in the courts and he lost the case. The prosecutor say he have a bandit face. Poverty is hell. Poverty is hell. Wake up in the morning and the baby cry. The sugar pan empty, the milk bottle dry. The little boy child on the mango tree. The mango green, hotting up his belly. The young girl falling. She wouldn't settle. She white, she bumsy with stinning nettle. Toilet paper, they never had. They used to tutu in the gully by the old backyard. They rub she down and they put she to sleep. The rain comes
Right.
down and the house does sleep.
Right, this is a frightening song in a kind of way, because it's a real song too, and it deals with all aspects of this poor people's place, from the bird to trying to escape the rat and the cat and everything, We have kind of apologized for poverty, despite the fact that we see people around who are poor, who work hard all the time. I know people who work their whole life. I know them working, and they work all the time. It's not to say like if they took a rest. They didn't go on vacation, and yet they're poor. And yet the situation is terrible. And I think that we as a civilization, have to deal with these questions. We have to. And especially, I know for me, and especially for people like me who come from this part of the world and who have been in this kind of experience, who have had this experience, of knowing enslavement, we had to do better than this. We have to do better than the individual just seeing about themselves. What has happened in this region, actually, is that people, Africans, were captured and enslaved as a group. It didn't say they pick out fellas from the crew. The grap was captured and brought, And yet, we are expected to liberate ourselves as individuals. So the thing is that the group is always at a disadvantage, because what you have are individuals who fighting to get their way out, and who would therefore view as a threat or as a challenge those people who are still in the situation. And I think that we had to do better. I think we need to do better. And I think that we will do better when we understand better our circumstances of who we are. And that would impose upon us, some kind of understanding of that we need to do better. Because we must know it. Because on the other hand, the situation we have now, I see fellas now boasting about how much money they have. I find that amazing. I thought that having money itself was a great thing. It added wings to you, it gave you a halo and all the rest of it, And so when you come to fight with another fellow who is a boxer or runner or something for the little fame, as if you need something more. So I don't know that having money itself, I'm talking about having plenty of money, is really is enough. I think all about the place people have found that is not enough. And we need to make the other step and deal with the reality.
Okay. The next song builds on what you were talking about in terms of the confrontation that we have not had with our history of enslavement. It's a David Rudder song, and it deals with our neighbors.
I went to Haiti a couple of times, I think. But one of the things I found in Haiti was that everybody seemed to be working. Everybody seemed to be working hard and busy, So a country is not poor because people are not working. People working hard. And I know that there's a lot of politics, but there's a lot that we have, before going to, I don't want to go into too deep water, but I think that What I wanted to say now, just jump away from me. Right, right. I'm saying that Haiti is resourceful, people work hard, and they've had to pay, what you call it, reparation to France, a lot of money. And when I look at the place, I see, oh, this is where the money gone. They don't have it. Somebody else has it, you know. And also I think we owe Haiti a lot, because one of the big events you know, we grew up hearing the word slave. This fellow is a slave. And I used to think about it because I knew my grandparents, you know, my grandfather was a black man from Tobago. So I looked at him and I figured, well, yeah, his father would have been a slave, because at some point, you know, from the people you know, it was like you had no family after a certain point. After your great-grandfather, perhaps, you had nobody. They fell into an abyss called slave. Right. I'm trying to, good. So I was always interested in the term slave, you know, and might have been one of the earlier people who used the term enslaved, which is a great difference, because what has happened is that we have imposed on people who are human, ordinary human beings, this idea that they have been lesser than somebody because somebody has been more stronger than them and more brutal than they could imagine. And they have been left to feel insecurity or inadequacy or not quite as good as the other people. And I was thinking that Haiti's victory over Napoleon gives all of us the sense of knowing the knowledge of not being slaves. Let me see if I can make that. You understand what I'm saying? That people know that here are people who had the resources at that point, who were able to fight and defeat the strongest power, colonizing people at that movement. And so even in a sense of keeping our, yes, heads above water, if you want, keeping our, the understanding that we were not slaves, which suggests that we agreed, you know, slave is something you agreed to be. And for a long time I used to write about the slave rebellions, but then I discovered that slaves can't revolt. If you have them agreeing, then they can't revolt. When they revolt, they're not what you thought they were. They are something else. And that is the question of, you know, the enslaved people. And I think that we have many ways of, well, some people run away from that being defined in that kind of way because they don't want to be, because it's really demeaning. Okay, all I'm saying is that we also have to take that into consideration and begin to engage with some of these ideas. Even though we generally, people use the term enslaved now, people who are educated, if you want. Some people still deliberately use it because, I mean, including the people who were called slaves, because in a way it's a kind of convenience. It's a convenience in terms of so many things. But we have to break out of these conveniences and try to engage the world, you know, in a realistic way. Right? And right. So I'm nearly.
Next tune.
Right, which is
a sparrow tune that could have been written yesterday. Gunslingers.
That's what really pays Sparrow selling guns nowadays. That's what really pays. Nearly every young man is a gunslinger with a razor and a steel knuckle on the finger. Don't mind the dress in suit and bow tie. All of them looking for gun to buy. The talk is we young and strong. We afraid of soul and who think they bad to me, them we more than we got we gun and partner we are making fun. If you smart, clear the way, or if you think you're bad, make your play.
We young and strong, we afraid of soul and tongue. Who think they bad, to me them we more than glad. We got and partner we are making fun. If you smart, clear the way, or if you think you're bad, make your play.
I thought I was choosing a song which was talking about, you know, the crime and stuff like that, and which in a kind of way this does, but I wanted to look at it in terms of how we look at these people who are in what we call depressed, oppressed. What other areas are you talking about? Hot spots. And which, well, I don't want to even go on to talk too much about it because I'll get a little extravagant. Yeah. Without even thinking about the background, without thinking about where they come from, where this community comes from. And I mean, maybe people are doing some things, but what is emphasized is the fact that these fellas killing one another. You know, I think we have to do better than that. Again, you know, we have to do better than this. And I think we can do better than this, actually. You know? So I didn't really want to go into that. But there was another song.
There was another song, the last song.
Right.
Second to last song, actually.
Right.
Because we had two last-ish songs.
You talk about a place where the people are carefree living. It is such a place of fun loving, spraying and fetting. Tis the land where people don't care if Ash Wednesday fall on Good Friday. Man, they love to struggle in this happy-go-lucky way. It's Blockorama, Fetorama, and just now is Masorama. So the foreigner come for carnival, and he telling himself after he had a ball,
Trinidad is nice, Trinidad is a paradise.
Mr. Foreigner, in La Trinity, the people have a carnival mentality.
Trinidad is nice, Trinidad is a paradise.
They are not serious, very few conscious, so I cannot agree with my own chorus.
Trinidad is nice, Trinidad is a paradise.
But I hear some people talking about Revolution Day, changes on the way. They're born in a land, the better parts controlled by the alien.
Well, there's two things that I would have wanted to say. One, and which Valentino deals with, is a kind of with the history. The history we have been presented about this country is a history of a nice, fun-loving, happy little people. The true history is a history that we have produced a society based on African enslavement, Amerindian slaughter, Indian indenture, and other. This is the reality. And unless and when we begin to take this into account, or we need to take this into account, it is only when we take it into account we can go forward. We cannot just ignore it or bypass it or pretend that it doesn't exist. This is it, you know. And so Valentino was making that point as well. But I think there's another point Um, right. I think as you go down further into the song, he says, well, Trinidad is nice for men like Sabga, Kepalani,
Kepalani, Maraj, and
Vaidilema. And when he sings that, it's the truth. The Africans who have lived here and been through all kinds of things here have not succeeded the Europeans. The people who had the stores and so on, if, okay, let's say Africans started without anything, they succeed into what the other people had. They don't occupy now any rung in the economic theater, if you want. We all know this, and we do nothing about it in a kind of way. And I think, I don't know how long it's going to last, being in this kind of way.
Do you think that that's because we have this kind of false narrative about, okay, black people must work in public service, be police, have a government work, sing calypso. Syrian people must own stores, etc. Indian people must have business and be Hindu and not deviate from that. So if you have a Syrian who's a Calypsonian, that kind of challenges our understanding. Or if you have, like your son, Che, is a surfer and a top surfer, it challenged people's understanding of who had access and right to do certain things. Or, if I say to people, yeah, I'm going sailing, no, that's not something that computes for people in terms of the box that we have created for our understanding of who people are.
And then you have to add to that the fact that we are the political power. You see, you have to add to that, is this the kind of ambition you have given to your people? Is this, I mean, yeah.
I also wanted to address the issue that Valentino comes out of a very specific period in our political calypso consciousness, which is 1970, and he was he was definitely part of that vanguard of Calypsonians who were part of the Black Power movement. And he makes a point in the song about, I hear some people talking about Revolution Day. And this brings change is on the way. Did the change ever come? One. And two, what does revolution mean or rebellion mean now, 40 years after a blip in the consciousness?
Well, one of the things that we talk about here is that we have, and this is part of the truth, that we have a multi-ethnic community and we get along fairly well. But I think that we don't do anything with that. That's one of the things we haven't done anything with. This, if we have these people, number of people of different ethnicities living in a place, in a small place, we don't know anything about them. We don't know anything about each other. And I think one of the big problems, one of the things that we will need to do is to learn about each other. I think that we could, given the fact that the world is getting smaller and people are interacting all the time, and people need to get some idea of somebody who at least know the other, I think that we will have to, let me back up and say this. I grew up in this place, right? I can't say I know, well, I know where Syria is, especially because it's on the news now, But if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't know. Some people come here and they ain't doing nothing special. They're not about anything special. And similarly with Indians who right before our eyes, we don't know their philosophers, we don't know their history, we don't know anything about each other. We don't know about African history either, or philosophy. We have a big education job to do, and yet we're talking about education. Yet we're talking about the big event in our lives has been education. You know, so I think that we had to kind of start to wake up.
Which brings us to our closing question, closing song.
Right. Well, shadow is a great example of how we've treated ourselves. Here was Shadow, who was coming up with music that was native, and he was cultivating it and bringing it out in a form that we could enjoy and appreciate. And for years and years, I don't know for how many years, most of the years, he never won the crown. Well, he won, I think, twice.
Twice. Road
Twice.
March.
Twice. Road March, but he didn't win the...
He won the crown
one with the
once.
stranger.
Yeah, with Stranger, he won the Road March.
And
Yeah. And Monarch.
oh, he won that, all
Everything.
in that, right? But he also won with Tobago Baseman, right? And one of the sad things is that, you know, that people have kind of felt, the judges, that they felt that he wasn't singing real calypso or some kind of thing like that. And so you were boxed into a kind of situation in which if you didn't conform to imitating, then, and try to be original and try to present yourself, because we could see that Shadow is one of the most original of the Calypsonians, that's a big deal. That question has to be again addressed. I mean, in art, in everything, what is, you know, art and what is native art? I mean, it seems to me that every artist is a national artist. An artist can't be born in the world. Every art, unless all artists are born in the world. Some artists are born nearer to the centers of power, and some born wherever they're born, right? But we can only make our contribution, it seems to me, from where we are, you know? And in a language and in a tone which we have to struggle for, to at least place us on some level of equality, if you want, with others. That's another big discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Uncle Earl, for sharing with us your songs. I think we have time for a couple of questions. If people have questions or songs or, you know, observations from the conversation that's happened so far, please don't all rush. Shamal.
You made 2 points that sort of connect in my head. One about education. Can everybody hear me? Yeah? Yeah. So, okay. So, one point that you made about education and the need to revisit how we educate ourselves. And the other one about identity. And I really, as you're saying that, wondered, are we too young as a country to have an identity? Are we trying to fit what are the legacy identities of where we come from into what we consider our identities, or sorry, no, I am really that's it. Actually, yeah.
No, but I mean, if you're talking about identity, which I didn't probably mention, but but if you're talking about identity, then we have to grow. If we're young and we know starting, well, at least know what's around you. What identity will we go forward with? If we even want to go forward with an identity, you know. But identity is also a thing of the moment. You know, we identify something now because this is at the stage of its growth. This is where it reached now. But it's not forever. Hopefully, as we go ahead, we will become more aware of each other, even just in the ordinary passage of time. But I think that it will be very useful if we deliberately try to understand each other, not only just in a face-to-face relationship, but given our history, where we come from and everything. And then we might be able to share some of the objectives that some of us individually have.
Peter.
You mentioned it a few times about certain songs. There's always a judging of songs.
Sorry?
There's always a judging of songs. in
Judging
this
of
country.
songs in this country. There's always a judging. You talk about judging.
There's always
Right.
a competition.
There's always a competition.
Is that a constraint? You know, you talk about the lack of love songs. Is the fact because I think that's unique to this society.
Well, I think that one has to think about where the other alternative. In a young country, yes, and again, goes back to the point you're making, is in a young country where you don't quite know what is anything for yourself, you know, I can understand how you begin to look to somebody else who, you know, says this is art, or this is painting, or this is whatever, or this is the other. You don't have enough self-confidence, it seems to me, yet to do it. And the whole process of learning and learning from each other and learning about the philosophy of each other and learning about the life of each other and so on is to give you the confidence, you know, as we proceed now. I could say, yeah, I think I could say now, you know, I know what I think I know what a novel is. I wouldn't say that I could have said that when I began to write, you know.
I think, you know, just to talk a little bit more about the whole idea of competition, I remember reading, I think it was probably Chalk Dust's book, Rituals of Power and Rebellion,
Right.
in which he talks about when the whole competition element came in, particularly in the mass, and it was kind of around the 1890s, and because they had been having so many problems with the Jamet, they introduced these competitions, and they would give you a little prize. And, you know, if you made a pretty costume, then you could win a prize. So in a way, that was part of the erasure of the rebellion, the rioting, the Wajang behavior from the carnival into this kind of prettiness for which you could win a prize.
Well,
That's one of the things. And, you know, I want to talk a little bit more about rebellion. I mean, we done talk, but we just still talk a little
but
bit
you
more
were
about
saying
rebellion.
something about, well, in 1919, they decided the status quo to, yes, to present carnival. But there were kind of two carnivals. I think that sometimes we get tied up in a kind of way that there was a carnival developed, if you want, if not brought in by the French, and there was one developed by the Africans. And they tried to get it at some point together. 1919 was the occasion when they tried to get the two things together. And, right. At that time, they offered prizes, but they almost sidelined what is called the traditional mass. They sidelined the traditional mass so much, and I don't know whether that is what Peter was talking about, that very recently, they had to find a day, an additional day, to get what they call traditional mass to perform. You know?
But I mean, the competitive, the competition idea in everything. And from the time you're in primary school, you get into this competition mode, whether it's to get to school, or whether it's to win Panorama, or Junior Soca Monarch, or Calypso Monarch, or, you know, and
Right.
that has introduced another challenge, which is people buying songs to go and win a competition.
Right.
And this is one of the things that challenges the idea of what the role of the Calypsonian is in the society.
Well, I mean, if in a society with limited resources, perhaps, if, for example, you want to send everybody to school, one could perhaps understand how they could say, okay, people who make a certain level of marks will go forward. Part of it, you have to bear in mind that I have been indoctrinated into this system as well, and perhaps I'm not looking closely enough at the alternative, which I have not formulated, you know, as yet, you know. But so I could see some value in the competition. But I could see some difficulties with it as well, because despite the competition, we have no old mass. There's so many things that have just fallen by the wayside, you know.
Competition and sponsorship. Sponsorship is another thing that I feel is a challenge. And
Right.
I go back to Fisheye and his concern about the fact that the sponsor would take away the rebellious nature of the warriorhood of the steel band. Have we seen that? I mean, was Fisheye right in being concerned about that?
Well, you see, I think that we are also addressing each other in this space. I think that it's not people are just doing things on their own. That we like the applause or interest of the other groups, you know, and that is a good thing, and it's something we're wrestling with still, you know. There are a lot of questions that, you know, we had to think again about. What was your question again?
Sponsorship.
Oh, the sponsorship. Yeah, well, we had to learn to build things for ourselves too.
Oh, sure.
You know, but also if people are in the society and also benefiting from it, they need to contribute to it too. I don't know if we have found the correct way in which this could be done, you know. Because once you have sponsorship, now you almost get a license to be apart from. And the people feel that you push you away too. It's not only that you draw away, they push you, you know. And so we have a new situation. We always have to be inventing and looking again and seeing what we could do, you know.
Just in relation to that, do you see then sponsorship as something that people or a group who can sponsor something as separate from another group? Or, I mean, are we talking about the same place? Because it almost sounds like it's two separate things fighting against each other, whereas maybe it could be looked at as these are people, which is, I guess, what is being said to a certain degree, trying to find a way to support each other moving forward, despite, you know, what about the
Right. And the more we know of each other and so on, I think, the more we can kind of begin to trust, because you can trust that you know a little bit more about me, and I know a little bit more about you. I think that could be helpful as well, you know. But seeing that we haven't done it, I can't say for sure, you know.
Any other questions, comments?
A drink.
All right, so the boss has said drinks time. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much, Uncle Earl, for sharing with us these songs. And